It's the Matt Sager Podcast, Wednesday, March 20, 2019. D-Day. Disney Day. This is the day that Fox gets eaten, swallowed by the Disney behemoth. It actually happened just after midnight. And it's an interesting time. It's an interesting event. I know that everyone's really excited, and I count myself among everyone there. I'm very excited about content we're going to see. This is one of the biggest mergers in history, Disney and Fox. It is honestly also a little bit scary. Disney now is so outsized huge. The power that this one now mega corporation has, it can be dangerous. And so I don't mean to poop on anyone's parade. I'm really excited about the Avengers joining the X-Men, or more likely fighting them. And I think the X-Men, everything we've seen from Dark Phoenix and from New Mutants, suggests that the franchise is in desperate need of joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe and getting as far away from Fox and those creatives there as quickly as possible. Both movies look so awful, coming as they do from some of the most beloved comics, some of the best source material that prior to this age of ubiquitous superhero films, attempts were made all the time via animation, and occasionally some very ambitious people would try and cobble together a TV show, and this all without success. Now, with so many people from the accounting department having a say in the creative department over at Fox, no amount, it seems, of talent either behind or in front of the camera can save what this just corporate miasma of sludge has done to the franchises there. Fox and the X-Men are now allergic to one another, and I think it would be for the best, again, based on everything I've seen, based on every report I've gotten from test screenings. And again, there is footage available of both these films. I truly believe it would be for the best if, in light of this merger, Fox said, you know what, we're going to pass on these films for now, wish everyone the best, have a meeting in 6 months once this merger has shaken itself out, all the unfortunate layoffs and reshufflings have taken place, and we now know what a Disney-Fox company looks like, that we will then either redo the scripts or write entire new ones and work on recasting what is now going to be a fully rebooted X-Men universe. The timing for that is actually not bad, given that Hugh Jackman is stepping down as Wolverine, and as much of an MVP as Wolverine has been to both Marvel and the X-Men comics, that is 100 times more true in the X-Men franchise, which many times seemed just ready to collapse under the weight of its own ineptitude. Not to mention the comic side of it being sabotaged. An angry Carl Icahn, prior to this merger, got so annoyed at not owning the X-Men that he worked very hard to phase them and the Fantastic Four, also a Fox property that's been toxic, that now can go under the Disney Marvel umbrella. Carl Icahn very spitefully took pains to take the X-Men, at that point just about the dominant force at Marvel. A little bit less so than in years past in light of the Avengers movie's success and the X-Men's flagging, middling, uneven performance themselves. But he then said, listen, we've got like 14 mutant titles, which admittedly was always excessive. Let's pare it down to like 1 and water it down and get a writer who's only barely interested and who has a low payment tier and farm it out to any artist doing anything but, for instance, launching an Uncanny X-Men title with, I don't know, Chris Claremont writing. People have been clamoring for him to return to the X-Men for, I don't know, a couple decades now. He's there. He's ready to do it. He's under contract. He is ready to go. But Carl Icahn didn't want the X-Men to be prominently promoted or featured in Marvel Comics because it was just, it's all about the movies. And too many X-Men, done too well, are essentially an advertisement for someone else. So all around, it's a good thing that, although that's very spiteful and childish, it's a good thing that he got his wish. And now the X-Men success or failure will have a lot to do with him and those who work with him. Alan Horn in particular will be a big name to pay attention to going forward. And the Fantastic Four, it's a very interesting time for them. I mean, Marvel has iced them out for several years. After the Disney acquisition was confirmed as going to happen, they began taking baby steps to work Marvel's first family back into the pages of their own comics. This just after releasing a 75 years of Marvel omnibus that somehow managed to exclude the first super team Marvel ever had. I mean, it's really shocking. But that franchise, too, was just as poorly handled, if not a lot worse, by Fox. How many attempts have we seen now at making a Fantastic Four movie? And none of them come close to at least the originality and independent spirit. And I can't believe I'm saying this about a movie that was shot for $90 by an ailing late-stage Roger Corman. But it had a spirit and life to it that no other Fantastic Four movie came close to. I mean, at least the actors were trying. They were working. They were acting. Admittedly, through foam rocky suits, sure. The effects are laughable, but far less laughable than either of the 2000s movies and the Josh Trank-directed 2015 Fan-4-Stick, as people call it, because of that unfortunate logo, is truly abominably awful. kind of offensive for casting Michael B. Jordan in such a terrible movie. Thank God we got to see him act his ass off as Killmonger in Black Panther. But Fox doesn't know how to handle these properties, clearly. And now they don't get to. So in that regard, this is all good news. I'm really not trying to be negative. However, I've worked for many entertainment companies, nearly all of which went through one or more mergers. And it's not all positive. The first thing is, as consumers, we got to understand that it's great. The same company now owns Disney, Marvel, Pixar, Fox Animation, and Star Wars. Marvel holdouts, the Fantastic Four, and the X-Men, and all that entails, such as The Gifted, this New Mutants that may or may not ever see the light of day, and if it does, it might not be in theaters, it might instead be on Hulu, which this new mega company also owns a controlling interest in. That's part of the Fox acquisition, is the bulk of Hulu now is owned by Disney. Now, they could load Hulu up with Disney properties and Fox properties, or they could handicap it, chop it off at the knees, soften the landscape, and lessen the competition for the ultimate release of the DC Plus streaming service, its debut. The problem is, power does corrupt. Or maybe more appropriately, with great power comes great responsibility. And we need to be hopeful that those in charge exert this responsibility. And power is a bit of a drug. I mean, wow. If you head over to this URL, thewaltdisneycompany.com, I'm looking at it on my iPhone. The banner's so huge, I'm only seeing portions of it. But on one page, we got The Shape of Water, Toy Story, Avatar, Captain Marvel, Bart Simpson, a woman who I don't recognize, and I feel terrible because I think she's a big news lady, and I'm not that great at news, apparently. But Deadpool, Fantasia-era Magic Mickey, Donald Glover in what I think is a promo shot for Atlanta, and Frozen. This is a major corporation now. This is Weyland-Yutani, Yo-Yo-Dine, Trader Joe's, Starbucks, all of that times a million. And sadly, one thing I would have really liked to see what would have happened with this would have been if the interestingly cordoned off Fox News would have been part of this deal. But somehow it emerged unscathed to go on committing its gross. Honestly, what's really going on at Fox News now is basically a civil war between the opinion department, which makes up most of their shows, the bulk of their programming, and all of the names who you know best for the most part. Your Brett Bayers, your Sean Hannitys, Laura Ingraham, before he was ousted, Bill O'Reilly, they were all opinion people. Then there's the news people like Shepard Smith who actually do whatever you think of Fox News. You probably are aware that most of what you see there is an echo chamber. It's not an insult. I mean, I'm not fond of it, but you'd be hard-pressed to argue that, for instance, Fox and Friends are going to do a hot take on a good job a Democrat does ever on anything. Whereas they'll generally speak very highly of, or directly to, with friendly smiles and waves through the TV. It's very creepy. It's like they're dealing with that little kid from the Twilight Zone who would send you off to the cornfield if you didn't say, everything's perfect, you're doing great. You can expect them to continue carrying water for instance, President Trump. Shepard Smith, on the other hand, will view footage for the first time, as he did today, of the president bad-mouthing the deceased John McCain, saying that he never was thanked by Mr. McCain for allowing him to have a funeral. And he was pretty appalled. And Sean Hannity, over on his radio show, declared that Fox News is at war with itself, that the news department is secretly trying to bring down the president by reporting facts. And I imagine that the news people are not thrilled being journalists at a station where so much of what you hear is opinions and personalities. There's a place for all that. And just because my politics differ doesn't mean you should agree or disagree with me based on anything other than this. News is precious. Respected, well-sourced journalism is nearly extinct. And it is everything for a democracy to have a healthy flow of news. Because if anyone, Democrats, Republicans, centrists, if there is such a thing, I kind of think that they're extinct. But everyone needs to know the truth, the unbiased, unvarnished, ugly, beautiful truth. And if you're watching a station that calls itself anything news, and 9 times out of 10, the people you're a big fan of, the people you turn to every day, get the unfiltered, fair, and balanced take on everything. If 9 out of 10 of them are opinion people who have a hotline to the White House and who are seen hobnobbing with and sharing lawyers and legal advice with and campaigning with any politician, let alone all politicians of a certain party, that's not good for you, even if you're a staunch Republican. We need truly independent journalism, and there used to be a lot of that. Now there's a lot of unverified blogs and podcasts like mine of varying degrees of quality. And if you're getting your news from me, you are screwed, because 9 out of 10 things I have to say involve comics and video games, occasionally books and movies and voiceover work and stuff like that. But my take on Trump's performance today shouldn't matter. You should have a menu of incredible news sources to choose from, with the most impeccably sourced facts, most unimpeachable anchors with the best reputations. This whole democracy thing is been several years in the making, and now technology and these giant corporations and the massive money flow means that we could be getting the best news. We should be. But this is the problem with too much greed and too much power. Anyway, Fox News is now a sort of private entity. It's part of what's called Fox Corp. And in a funny way, it's kind of good that it's been freed from its association with Fox Entertainment, which, again, goes to Disney today. Because it was always awkward, right? Like if you'd watch The Simpsons and you'd see a sign on like an airplane as it flies by, an ad for Fox News saying, "We're not racist, but we're number one with everyone you know who's a racist." And that would be awkward. Similarly, a lot of people working on Fox shows, animated or otherwise, disagree vehemently with members of this presidential administration and as a result with a lot of the big anchors at Fox News. So now they truly are two different entities. And the Walt Disney Company, don't get me wrong, I am very excited to see the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, and hopefully Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds, by the way, was one of many celebrities to send out a very funny Instagram post, which I'll try and either link to or embed in tonight's podcast description. Probably it'll just be a link. But it's very funny. It's very cute. It is also important to remember that we're now talking about one company owning Marvel, Star Wars, Fox Animation, Fox Entertainment. What I'm saying is this could all be wonderful, but just understand there is more to life than what the future holds for the X-Men franchise. And when will Captain Marvel meet Rogue, subsequently changing both of their power sets dramatically? Sorry for the semi-spoilers for what are likely future movies, but they come from old Marvel comics that many have been dying to adapt to films, and now we're going to. That's a great thing. It really is. But jobs will be lost. I'm trying to not be a nut job like a Rorschach going through the streets of Manhattan saying the end is nigh. It's not. Everything is fine. Especially for fans like that great Parks and Rec episode where Patton Oswalt did that huge monologue about the Marvel heroes fighting Boba Fett. The roster for the X-Men and the Avengers has never looked better. And it's a good time. The Avengers are on a very high note, ending what has recently been christened the Infinity Saga, the first 22 movies, phases 1 through 3 of the MCU. While the X-Men are drowning in awful publicity, reports of people walking out of free test screenings laughing. Not during the cute funny parts where, oh, look at Nightcrawler's 80s jacket. No, laughing when Dark Phoenix manifests her powers and kills her friends. They're so desperate for decent footage worthy of a trailer that there are massive spoilers in the trailers for Dark Phoenix. And New Mutants have yet to do the reshoots that they say are needed. Similarly, we don't know if they're going to end up on Hulu or in theaters or neither. This is not for lack of money or a great cast. It's due in large part, honestly, some of this has been Marvel's fault. Support they've been unwilling to lend those franchises, which in terms of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four are frankly a little egregious because number one, it has shown how spiteful grown adults running these corporations can be and how willing they are to hurt their own characters. And it was a statement of sorts that comics don't matter as much as films when the X-Men got phased out and especially when the Fantastic Four got phased out. But Disney and Marvel especially, there's a talent pool there, which if they have any interest in rehabilitating these characters, or better yet, rebooting them, making them part of this greater whole cinematic universe, that would be a great thing. And I expect that to be the case. But will Fox News, for instance, be better off as an independent company? Will their stain no longer touch shows like The Simpsons or Seth MacFarlane and his Family Guy? He has been quite vocal in his disdain for a lot of what goes on Fox News, and when not confronting them directly, taking on a lot of causes that clearly bother Fox News. So both entities are now free from one another. It's a great thing. I am not here to poo-poo anything. I did that earlier. I'm quite regular. I'm just saying, big companies, this is how Skynet happens. There will be a lot of layoffs. I know I said I wasn't trying to depress you, and I'm not, but based on my experience with mergers, look for layoffs, look for a new set of standards for people from both companies, and look for a lot of internecine civil war, or at the very least, obviously conflicting agendas. James McAvoy, meanwhile, clearly sees that Dark Phoenix, whatever else it is his exit ramp, pun not intended, for Professor X. And he said on his Instagram, he was doing a live stream, and he replied to a question of who he'd like to play in the DC universe, and he replied that he'd actually really love to play the Riddler. He had that answer ready, saying he'd always liked the Riddler when he was growing up, and, quote, I've always thought DC does really good bad guys. Anyway, my point is to modulate your expectations, to expect the best and hope for it, but understand that everything comes at a price. Fox certainly did, and Disney intends to make that money back. They'll do it by adding programming, they'll do it by consolidating and cutting certain programming. It's really unclear. This is just day one. The hangover from the party has yet to even kick in, let alone the consequences, good and bad. But with Avengers Endgame on the horizon, nothing from the Fantastic Four in a couple years, and thank God, and the X-Men in limbo, it is a great time, the perfect time, for Marvel to have expanded its cinematic family to include nearly all of its comics properties. I do believe they will shepherd the X-Men and Fantastic Four way better than Fox ever could, and that's true of just about any film studio. I mean, Troma would be light years ahead of Fox. Fox has done terribly by those franchises, but the Russo brothers have strongly hinted that after Endgame, we're going to see a dramatic change in the Avengers roster. And now that could include, for instance, as it did in the comics not long ago, The Thing. And wouldn't that be interesting? I think that the only definitive losers of today are the producers and cast of the X-Men movies, because some of them will likely make the cut at this new Disney Marvel version of the X-Men. Although Disney/Marvel may be interested in cutting ties and really starting fresh, which is actually, I think, a bit of a good idea. There have been more bad X-Men movies than good. And as comics professionals, the people at Marvel know that there's nothing like a reboot to cleanse the palate. It's not a habit one should indulge in too often, but I think in this case, it's absolutely appropriate. The fans would dig it, and I am looking forward to seeing what our new corporate overlords have to offer us. Can't wait to see what's in store. And really, I'm happy. I'm merely saying we don't yet know how it's going to play out. Hope for the best, but strap yourself in for a new beginning, a fresh start, and what might potentially be, especially in these early stages, a little bit of a bumpy ride. It's a whole new ballgame, but the team with the most players tends to win, and that now is Disney. Hope your week is going great, and I hope that this news has been as exciting for you as it is for me, and that, like me, you're modulating your expectations. Take a deep breath. It's just getting started. So get in touch with the Matt Sager podcast. You can email me, matt@mattsager.com, or call me at 646-535-4788. Also in the links to tonight's podcast, you can check out my Patreon. I love your patronage. It's patreon.com/Matt Sager. There will also be a link there to my merch store from my buddies at wehavemerch.com, where you can get Matt Sager podcast t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, and stickers. For everything else, my voiceover reels and contact information, more social media profiles and handles, my articles and blog posts, and back episodes of this podcast. You can get all that and more at my website, mattsagervoiceover.com.